Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us on this How I Got Here panel kind of questionnaire session meetup today. Before we get too into things, I kind of want to just take a couple minutes to go over who Techlahoma is. This whole thing was put on by Techlahoma for anyone who may not know or may kind of be new to the area, like myself. So I'm just going to go through this and kind of make sure everyone knows what the community is all about. So Techlahoma is a nonprofit volunteer-run organization. They do a lot of user groups, a lot of meetups, a lot of local events. It's just a great community for if you want to get involved in sort of the greater technical discussion here in Oklahoma. I know I moved here from California back in September, and they've sort of embraced me with both arms, and it's been a really great experience ever since. So I encourage you, if you haven't reached out, become an active member. I highly encourage you do so. Obviously, with any community or anything, there's a level of conduct that's expected. It's really just about having respect for everyone's ideas and the way you interact with everyone. If you have any concerns, there's a link here, conduct.techlahoma.org, where you can find out some more information. Otherwise, in our Slack channel, basically just ask anyone to get in touch with a mod, and they will point you in the right direction, and you can kind of talk it out one-on-one with them. I haven't had any issues as long as I've been a part of it. Everyone's been great, but there is support for you if you find something that makes you uncomfortable.
Real quick, I don't know that the audio is going through on Twitch. If y'all are watching on Twitch and can hear us, please say so. But Chris, you said you could hear it? Okay. Someone says he can, so Clifford's not hearing it, but...
Yep, I have the call
Weird.
muted.
Okay.
And
other people are saying they hear it too, so awesome. Thank you. Sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
No worries. Okay, yeah. And so if you're looking to get involved in the Techlahoma community, there's lots of ways to get involved. You can kind of just introduce a meetup like I'm doing right here. We also need people to do some Twitch highlights, basically going through these videos and cutting them up into little highlights and exporting them to YouTube. I do a lot of that too. I'd be more than happy to walk anyone through that if that's something that sounds interesting to you. I'm not a genius, and I find it very easy myself. So I know it's something with a little bit of help that anyone could help out with. But there's so many ways you can volunteer and help out. So please, no matter what your skill level is, so don't feel shy and just reaching out and trying to get involved however you can. Lastly, obviously, if you're watching this live, you know about the Twitch, our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Techlahoma. Maybe you don't know this, but if you're subscribed to Amazon Prime, you actually get a free monthly subscription. You can send that to any Twitch channel you want. If you're not already using it for someone else and you wanted to drop that to Techlahoma, I know they get a little cut of that, and so that'd be very, very appreciated and would help the community continue to grow. Lastly, if you want to kind of just connect with us and be involved in our more day-to-day conversations and things like that, we do have a Slack. You can find that link right here and just reach out to anyone in the community, and they can help you get connected and get set up in Slack there. So kind of just moving on to today's panelists, we have Andre, Caleb, Fabio, and Kelsey, all talking about how they got here. So go ahead, Kim, you can take it away from there.
Okay, I will present hopefully the right thing here. Got several things going on, but I think now you see how I got here. Okay, so it's kind of up to our panelists to define like what we mean by here, but we want to know, how did you get to this stage in your career? So my name is Kimberly Collins. I'm one of the co-organizers of the group, and we'll let each person introduce themselves by just telling us a little about who you are and where you are in your career. And we'll let Andre go first.
Hello, everybody. As Kimberly said, my name's Andre Butler. A little bit about myself. I am a front-end engineer. I specialize in React, also Java, as well as Node. A little bit more about myself. I transitioned to development for web-based software development in November of last year. But in a nutshell, some of the projects that I've worked on most recently have been freelance work. So the stage in my career is still searching for a full-time role, but in the interim, I have been doing freelance work to continue to build my portfolio. I'm happy to speak with everyone, and I look forward to answering the questions.
Great, thank you, Andre. Next is Caleb.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Caleb. I am a clinical product analyst. I work on a product team for a healthcare IT company. And so a little background about me is I'm a pharmacist by training, and I was able to do some clinical pharmacy informatics in healthcare. And then I was able to transition into product, specifically tech product, by identifying where my skills in my current capacity could be valuable in the new direction I want to go. And then I was able to sell myself just by LinkedIn and so forth. And that's how I am where I am today. I've been in this position for just over a year and a half now.
Okay, thank you. And Fabio is next.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm Fabio, and I have been a developer for quite some time. Started in high school and then college and all the way through. I have been employed for about 3 years now in a banking software company here in Oklahoma. We usually do C Sharp, but in my career I've done VB, Delphi, Python, and React, and now Angular, kind of like going through all the possible languages, I guess, learning a little bit about them. And right now, learning agile and this new way of doing things. And I have been quite active on that community too, and has been quite fun. So hopefully it will stay that way.
Awesome. Kelsey's going to be next.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kelsey. I still consider myself someone that's definitely early in my career. I've been studying full stack web engineering or software engineering at Holberton here in Tulsa. So I've been coding for about a year now, and I'm currently specializing in the machine learning specialization. So still continuing to learn and expand my knowledge, and I'm happy to help others get excited about coding.
Awesome. If anybody else in the chat, if you want to introduce yourselves to us, we've got a few people watching, so we'd love to hear from you. And as we go through these questions, if y'all who are watching want to answer, feel free to write your answers out. We did get a few other community members to provide answers too, so we'll be going through some of those as the panelists answer also. The first question is, did you start your career in tech or something else? And what was your motivation to either start in or switch to tech? And whoever wants to go first, just unmute and go ahead.
I'll kick us off. My motivation was definitely just once I realized how much I enjoyed technology after having an opportunity just when I was in college to work on a tech team, a system administration team. And so once I got a taste of, how much I enjoyed it, it was a no-brainer. That's where I wanted to go moving forward. It was just the journey to get there that took some time.
I'll go next. So I'm a little bit of a career transitioner. So I did not start out in tech. I've had a long career in corporate sales and marketing. But what kind of piqued my interest is I relocated to Oklahoma City from Minnesota. And my role was as a corporate sales director for a hotel near the airport here in Oklahoma City. And as part of my role, I would secure clients, and I was inundated with clients that would send me booking requests. And just kind of through my own knowledge, I kind of through materials that the management company I was working for at the time had available. And I was able to piece together coding links to send my clients booking links that they could book all of their rooms on their own. It was really, really basic coding, but it was my first real world experience with it. Absolutely loved it. It freed up a ton of time for me, which transitioned me to looking into more ways to incorporate development and programming in my day to day. That eventually led me to meeting this great group of folks at Techlahoma, Kimberly, Alex, Chris. There was one time I went to a meetup, and I don't know if they remember, but it was at a library. It was kind of a stormy night, and I think nobody at all showed up, but you guys were there, and it was super, super helpful. And they really kind of helped me carve out like a learning path. And so from there, I transitioned to completing a full stack boot camp that focused on the MERN stack, Mongo, Express, React, and Node. But absolutely loved it. And then fast forward today, I've just kind of continued that momentum. But that is how I started my career in tech.
Awesome. Yeah, I forgot about that meetup, but when you mentioned it, I remember. Kelsey, you want to go next?
Yeah, so I also did not start out in tech. I actually got my degree in engineering physics, but was noticing a lot of my internships and projects really could benefit from better analysis if I was to be able to incorporate coding. For example, one project that I worked on, I worked more on like the lasers side, but we were creating a program where we could easily calibrate the laser and get it up and running before you actually start your day. Instead of having to manually calculate that, be able to just put it into a computer program and run that calculation. And so I started recognizing how much coding could benefit my science. And so I actually don't think of my career as like a switch into tech. I think of it as kind of a merging of tech and science together.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I had a similar, I started in, or I graduated with a degree in physics and found myself in programming in a similar way. Fabio, do you want to answer this question too?
Sure. So, I did start in tech when I was in middle school. My brother was doing high school, and he had when I went to high school, we had programming classes from the first year. So he was working through that, and I was working with him because I got interested. And then once I started learning about it, I was like, this is exactly what I need in my life. If I have a problem, I will solve it on my own. If my computer doesn't work, I can look through it and all that. So I did start in tech, and like I said, it has been quite a journey, especially because usually the things that I learn are not the things that I'm going to use. So we learn using VB or Delphi or whatever, very verbose language. But in the real world or out there, even though those languages are there, mostly you're going to deal with languages that are more high level or different. And so that was quite a steps they have to take. So it was interesting to start from tech, I guess, and like very young, and then now getting here and then seeing like how it's so different than I thought it was.
Those are great answers. We've got a couple other answers, and then we have a question from Twitch. When I asked Chris about this, he said that he started with electrical engineering in college. He said university because he's Canadian or whatever. Switched to computer engineering and then finally computer science. I think we're hearing that same career changing or major changing and then kind of ending up here. And then Ryan Quinn said something similar. And I'll share these slides later so y'all can read all these words. But one thing I want to point out was he said his plan was always to go into tech, but just much he kind of stumbled into it. And so we, I think, all are just finding ourselves here. So the question from Twitch was, how did you know what language you wanted to learn? Saying, I am just now getting into coding and really don't know what direction to go in. And so a couple
I
of
have a
people.
great answer for that.
Go for it.
So for me, personally, I followed where the money was, for lack of better words. So kind of carving out my own plan. I would come through on my downtime um, opportunities in Oklahoma City, and I would notice a pattern of what technologies they were looking for. And from there, I used that as my own pathway to find what technologies were in demand and then what technologies I should be teaching myself. But that's how I found which technology I'd like to learn.
I think I think it kind of goes with the problem. I mean, if you have nothing, no problem to solve, then you can choose one. But some languages are designed to some problems. You can do a lot of things with a lot of the languages, but sometimes it goes with the situation. The situation will ask you for a certain problem. So you can try to do a machine learning project in C++ if you want, but it's gonna take you way more time than it would if you use libraries in Python, for example. So in that case, it kind of got stuck with Python. And two is the thought process. I think some languages have a specific thought process, and some languages have like a different. And so whatever it works for you, it's better.
Yeah, great answers. Anybody else have one? If not, we'll go to this next question. So this one is, what tools and practices helped you get started? Who wants to take this one first?
I'll jump in. I feel like this kind of answers the Twitch question and this current question. So I also had no idea where to start in coding. And so I actually heard about Holberton, which is a coding school in Tulsa. I think so you can apply from anywhere and then come and join Tulsa. We start out in C, which kind of gives a good overview and kind of basics of how other coding languages kind of came about. So C is very low level, which means you have to be very specific and tell the computer exactly what you want it to do. We then moved into Python, which is a higher level programming language, to be able to get some more experience with that. And then since learning kind of those foundations of a lower level language and a higher level language, I found it's really easy to switch between different languages. So I've also coded in JavaScript, Java, done some work with um, like Flask, Django, I mean, all kinds of different programs, but because I felt like I've got a good foundation in C and Python, and that kind of helps me to pick up new languages today.
Yeah, those are some great points. Caleb?
Yeah, I'll follow up on specifically the practice that I helped me, and that was just starting with very achievable goals. So if the goal was to learn how to program in Python, I would be like, today I'm just going to learn about strings and I'm going to apply it in a little main.py function app, and that'll be my goal. Because once I hit that goal, everything just springs forward and you keep working, builds momentum. So even on the days where I wasn't in the mood, you just set something very small, achievable, and then that'll get you progressing forward.
Yeah, I totally agree. When I asked Chris this, he said, I learned Java in school, but freeCodeCamp helped me get started with JavaScript. And then he also mentioned, a lot of people have mentioned Colt Steele's boot camp is a lot of what he uses. Ryan Quinn had a long list. I'm not going to go through all of them, but there's even more in the slides, so I'll read that later. Did anybody else want to answer this question of things that helped you get started?
Yeah, I had a follow up. So just along the lines of practice, something that really, really helped me was on Twitter. I found a group called Career Karma. And one thing that they had was a 21-day coding challenge. And essentially, it was 21 days of creating a habit of practicing development each day. And along that journey, you would reach out to someone who was more experienced than you were, and then someone who was also less experienced than you were. And you would kind of exchange ideas and get different ideas on programming languages. But kind of committing to that each day really kind of helped me get better than I was the previous day. But that was a practice that really helped, and it kept me connected to other developers so that I could kind of grow from there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'd seen tweets along those lines, and now I'm glad to know a little bit more about it. If you want to post later more about that Career Karma 21 steps or whatever it is, because that sounds really interesting. This question, I think, is going to go along some of those same lines, but this was a question from April Cook. She said, if you could give past you one piece of advice for when you started coding or learning to code, what would it be?
I would say just get started. I feel like I spent a lot of time being really nervous about coding and felt like it was like too high tech. I couldn't get into it. I was just going to stick to like the engineering side. But once you kind of get into coding, I've started to kind of realize, okay, like it seems daunting at first, but really with enough practice, just like anything, everyone can learn to code. And so I actually wish I started sooner.
Those are the same types of answers we get all the time. Andre?
Yeah, I would just kind of say the same thing as Kelsey. I really kind of echo that. There's really no big secret. The big secret is just get started. And for me, I've often found that sometimes my motivation comes after doing it. So sometimes when I think like this is too hard, but once I actually just get in the groove of programming, it just kind of flows naturally. So there is no big secret. Just get started and be persistent.
I think you'll see some of these same answers. I'll let Fabio go, and then I got answers from a few other people who were just along these exact same lines. So Fabio, what's your answer?
Yeah, I was gonna say that, and even like more than that, one other thing I would say is, some people they don't do that, which kind of blows my mind. But they try to memorize instead of understanding. And I think it's in code is really important that you understand what you're doing instead of memorizing what you're doing. Not every problem is the same, But what you want is, when you're learning, is what you want to acquire tools to solve different problems. It's not about solving a problem anymore and acquiring tools. So every if statement that you do or everything that you learn is a tool that you might use in the future. So just kind of, try to understand instead of memorizing.
Caleb, anything you want to add?
Yeah, a hiccup I ran into was I tried to learn an IDE along the way, and I would stay away from any IDEs. Just go with a straight text editor, as simple as you can go right out the gate.
Yeah, I think some of these answers are going to go sort of along those lines. April said this is a never-ending process of learning. Nothing's going to be, you're not going to be done. There's not going to be a day when I've learned everything I learned, I'm done. She also suggested really leaning into the community, which is a thing that I think Andre and a couple of y'all have mentioned. So you can read all of her words later. Chris said coding in school is nothing like it is in real life. He hated programming at first until he found JavaScript. John had an answer along these same lines too. There are lots of different programming languages, so if one doesn't feel right to you, try something else and something will click, and then just start building things. So I think y'all said just start, and you'll retain more as you start creating your own projects. And then Tanner said just stick with it. So don't give up easily. And sort of combining a couple of answers, maybe JavaScript is not for you, but something else would be, or vice versa. So try different things, and it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So what skill or experience that you've had has come in handy for coding that new people might not have expected?
So one skill that really came in handy for me is, it sounds kind of basic, but being able to do research, that has been super, super helpful, particularly when I'm stuck with like a development piece, and being able to use Google to your advantage is actually super helpful as an engineer.
Kelsey?
Yeah, I agree. I would definitely echo the good research skills. I would also say good communication skills. So, something that I've learned and kind of heavily relied on, a lot of the projects at Holberton are peer learning based. And so you have to spend a lot of time communicating with a partner, really making sure that you're on the same page, same understanding of what's going on in the code, and really kind of work together. And I find that a lot of times the people that I've interacted with get stuck in the code. And so, what I found as a skill or experience that you might not expect is being able to create analogies for things. So, not just, this is a for loop, it's starting at I, but like, okay, why are we going through this for loop? And being able to kind of break down and explain the coding in human language is a really important skill.
Yeah, I totally agree. That was what Chris mentioned. He said writing and communication skills, being able to communicate your ideas and solutions, not just through code, but all sorts of other ways. Fabio, do you have an answer too?
Yeah. Man, there's so many things. But possibly, I would say like I said, logic ability of understanding. That is one thing that usually people don't try to grasp. They start doing it without understanding it. And like I said, you want to start doing it, but you also want to understand. So when I started, I have a full year of just algorithms. We did no programming languages. It was like pseudocode altogether, but understanding what the algorithm did before I actually did something. And that was somewhat beneficial, somewhat not, depending on the person. It helped me, but it did not help a lot of other people. Um, so I would say programming logic is very important.
Yeah, I like that. And I loved Kelsey talking about the analogies. And John talks about breaking things down, like you mentioned, the pseudocode and the analogies also. He said it still struggles with seeing the finished product, but the more you break it down, the easier it is to accomplish the final product. And then Ryan had several things to say. I don't even know if I can summarize. There's several things here. This was the one that I think Caleb alluded to. Don't try to learn two things at once. So trying to learn how to use an IDE and language at the same time. Like if you can learn just one thing at a time, that might make it easier. Coming to terms with failing, like you're going to fail a lot. And then definitely read these slides afterwards. Be looking for the link because there's a lot of good stuff in here. The next question is what your milestones were on the way to here. And are there events that have moved your career forward versus stagnating? Who wants to take this one first? you want to keep thinking about it, we can come back to this one. Some of these, like, oh man, I don't know. It's a hard question, and I don't want y'all to feel like you're being interviewed here. Fabio, do you have something?
No, Caleb, you can go.
Okay, Caleb.
You can go after.
I think a huge milestone for me was just when I was confident enough to finally interact with other people who code and try to work on group projects. That was a major turning point, and it accelerated my learning. Collaboration. When you run across a problem, you can just talk to the person on the other end of the phone. You learn it much quicker than spending hours searching through Google and so forth.
Yeah, Fabio.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's kind of hard to take milestones because, like the other answer said, it's a never-ending process. Um, when I learned asynchronous programming and parallel programming, I thought that was really great. And so I take that as a milestone. But like I said, it's not a big one because there is no milestone. You just keep going.
Kelsey, do
I
you
would
have an answer?
say,
Go ahead, Andre.
sorry. I would say a big milestone for me, because again, I was very purpose driven and intentional with seeking out a career transition. So a big milestone for me was getting to a point to where I would no longer get an instant rejection, getting some sort of coding assessment or some sort of invitation to continue to process in terms of like a candidate for an opportunity. But I went through a very long, like not a very long phase, but a phase where I was getting instant rejections after applying for opportunities. And a big milestone for me, it was a little bit of a small win, was when I started to produce projects that were like enterprise level code, but it would attract employers. And it was enough to kind of propel me forward to keep going. But it was a huge milestone for me that I was at least getting some fish to bite, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
I kind of have a few answers to this question. So for me personally, the biggest milestone that I've been able to achieve has been creating what's called an MVP, or minimum viable product. And so what we did with that was we got to develop our idea from scratch. What's something that you wanted to program, do all the research, build it yourself. So it wasn't just like, okay, here's a practice problem, solve the code. It really was like project, hands-on, let's solve a problem. And that was really exciting for me. I would also say kind of a mini milestone. I don't know if you want to call it a milestone or just something to kind of keep you on check, that I feel like I keep having to remind myself, is asking for help. I feel like sometimes we get kind of stuck before we ask for help. And it really does kind of seem like a milestone or achievement when you do kind of reach out for help and you are able to solve a problem with somebody else.
Yeah, great answers. We have a couple. Chris kind of went through the history of how he got to his current job. So you might want to read this later, but he kind of goes through sort of what the big milestones were for him. And then Ryan said the same thing that y'all have said. Sometimes there aren't milestones as much as like you just keep every day, try to improve based on last day, based on yesterday, try to get just a little bit better. And I think that was the end of that one. There was a question on Twitch though. What important technologies other than programming languages should people know to become a professional software engineer? So technologies other than programming languages. Anybody have an answer?
Obviously, so Slack is a big one. Discord.
Man, I don't know. I don't know if SQL is considered the programming language, but I would say databases in general. HTTP. If you're doing web stuff, you need to understand what HTTP is and how it works. And well, like it's not programming language, but like I said, a lot of the things you learn they come out of doing it. So you understand a website, and then we're like, I don't know what 404 is. So you start researching because you want to do a website. So there's not a lot of technologies other than programming languages because, like I said, it comes out of what problem you're trying to solve.
Anybody else have an answer? Someone on Twitch, yeah, SQL. I mean, the L stands for language, I guess, but I don't really think of it as a programming language. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Andre. I definitely agree on databases. That'll help you. Anybody else want to answer this one, or do we want to go ahead to the next one on habits that keep you moving forward? Yeah, how networks work was an answer on Twitch. So what are some habits that keep you moving forward in your learning journey, and how do you stay motivated?
I would say for me, I'm very motivated by working with other people, which is why I found Holberton to be a good kind of introduction to coding for myself. And so, what keeps me motivated is talking with other people, hearing what they're working on with their projects, seeing if I can help them out, seeing if they can help me out with my problems, and just kind of keeping that communication going kind of always reinvigorates me. Instead of me getting like stuck in a rut, can hear different ideas and kind of use that as motivation to stay excited and keep moving forward in my journey.
And while the rest of y'all think, if you have an answer, Chris talked about basically the same thing I think you just said, finding something that you're interested in, maybe this side project that he says, is maybe not totally related to what he's doing at work, but this other thing that he's just interested in learning just because helps you from feeling, overwhelmed and burnout. I think we had another answer to that one. Yeah, Ryan Quinn talked about reading a lot, trying new things, just like Chris just said, and just kind of figuring out how things work. Anybody else want to answer this question on habits or how you stay motivated? Fabio?
Yeah, I was gonna say that for me is the constant thought that there's always a better way. If something is being done, there's probably a better way. So trying to find out the better way is kind of what gets me going. And then after that is basically the visualization of the entire process once it's done. So once you have that, I want this to look like this, and you keep like visualizing and seeing how things will be better or more productive or something like that. And I think that's kind of productive to kind of visualize where you want to go and just keep one day after the other working towards that goal.
Yeah, like April said on the other question, like nothing is ever done. You can always make it better. So there's no like resting and you're finished. Like you can always improve something. Um, any last questions
One
on
thing,
our answers, Andre?
yeah, one thing for me was just kind of learning to enjoy the process of learning. It's a little bit daunting sometimes when you are starting from scratch or you're teaching yourself a new technology. And along the way, you really kind of pick up and learn how you like to take in information and just kind of how you yourself process things. So I think something that kept me motivated was just learning to enjoy the process or find beauty in it, despite getting stuck or having the time consumption of debugging an error. But just enjoying the overall process and knowing that it's not going to be easy every single day, but thinking of just being better than you were the day before. That's really kind of helped me.
I want to piggyback on what Andre just said there. Realizing you're better than the day before, and a huge habit that I've trained myself to do is reflect on the successes of the past week, of the past month, of the past quarter. Learning's difficult, and learning takes a lot of intention. And when you're running into that barrier of not wanting to do it, take a moment and recognize, like, look at what I've accomplished in this last month, and then that will motivate you, more than likely to progress forward.
Those are some great answers. The next one, and again, feel free to keep answering these questions and asking more questions in Twitch. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that. Someone asked about the first day and the first week and the first month, first year of your tech career, your development job. They went on to ask, like, what about the first decade or first century? Just joking. But we did, and I'll go through the answers we got on this while y'all think about your first day, week, month, year. Yeah, Chris went through some details. The first day is just getting your computer set up, some onboarding. Most companies it's not gonna be day one, solve this. It's not gonna be like your interview where you had to answer this, algorithm. Most of the time, the first day and week is just like getting things set up. So he gave some good answers on that y'all should read later. Ross gave a good answer on this. Just feeling frustrated. He's like, I want to work already. Like you get into this job and you're like, you're ready to prove yourself and show what you've done and tackle these challenges. And then like you don't even have a login to your password for your computer yet. And then he also talked about how work is not like school. So you're not going to get necessarily everything that you need. Like, in college, you got the specs and you just, did the assignment, but in the real world, it's not exactly that same way. And then Ryan talked about, I thought he had a good point here of don't feel bad about bouncing around a little bit, especially when you're first starting out. So I'll let you all think about this and answer anything you want to tell us about your first day, week, month, or year.
So for me, it wasn't quite linear. I would say it's like zigzag and even circular at times, but I would say that because I kind of started dipping my toes into development clear back in 2017, and then got some momentum, and a couple things came up, and I just put it to the side for almost 6 months. And so it's not unheard of if you're on your coding journey and you're self-taught developer, you're kind of career transitioning, and that sometimes you very well might have to put it down. But for me, I had to take a break from it, from focusing on technology, and then I was able to come back to it, and I just kind of kept that momentum going. So I just want to throw it out there that sometimes you can be on a steady path and then you'll have to put it down, but getting back in the saddle by coding every day really kind of prevents you from your coding skills atrophy. But that was kind of how my first maybe 12 months went. But I just learned a lesson to continue to code every day or have some sort of 1% better than what you were the day before. And that kind of compounds and it really helps.
Great answer. Fabio, did you have something too?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, at first, I mean, first day and first week and first month, it's kind of like Chris mentioned, is that you are very dependent on other people, and I felt really bad of that because it seems like I was like wasting their time that they could be working by helping the new guy. But then I also understand that sometimes you have to take one step back to take two steps forward. So at first, it's kind of weird to have to ask everything that you do. You have to ask questions about it. So everything you're gonna do, you have to like check and recheck and say, I don't understand what I'm doing here, or something like that. But then after a while, it kind of it clicks, and then you just keep going, and then it's more and more you are on your own. So I think it's interesting, but I don't feel. I would say like just a tip that I learned is even though you're gonna feel bad that you have to keep asking questions, think as an investment that they are putting on you on their time, so you will learn more, and then you're better at your job too, and then you can like repay them later with doing like a great job or something.
Yeah, good answer. Andre, did you have something else?
Yeah, so Fabio really made me think about something that's huge that I'm pretty sure all of us have experienced. But when he said feel bad about asking questions, imposter syndrome is real. I have had a couple of contracts with clients, and sometimes I go into it kind of feeling bad for reaching out constantly to other developers or kind of taking longer than expected. But that is all part of the process, and it relates back to just being comfortable with being uncomfortable and being comfortable with constantly getting out of your comfort zone. But Fabio just made me think of imposter syndrome and how that can kind of set in. But it's good to have little mental tricks that are self-assuring that you know what you're doing.
Yeah, good answer. Kelsey?
Going off of what Andre and Fabio have been talking about, I was going to say the first day, week, month, year also is not linear for me. I experienced a lot of that kind of up and down, or maybe even kind of going back full circle. And I think a lot of that comes from imposter syndrome. There are going to be some days where you're like, look at me, I'm a coding wizard, I know exactly what I'm doing. And then other days where you're just stuck and you're on Google all day and you feel like you don't make any progress. So it's going kind of off of what Caleb mentioned on the last question. Something that I've learned as kind of a trick is like whiteboarding at the end of the day. Like this is something that I learned that I didn't know but at the beginning of the day, and just kind of keeping that log of like, okay, you are making progress. So even if you do feel like you have that kind of roadblock of I don't know what I'm doing, you can kind of see like, okay, I remember feeling this a week ago and I was able to solve the problem. So now I'm facing this new challenge. I know it's frustrating right now, but I know I have the skills to be able to solve and tackle that problem.
I want to kind of take this from a different angle. And hearing tech career, the start of it, I think a lot of people, for me at least, I orient that to like a first job. And I think it's really important to realize with any job, there's a culture at that company, there's relationships at that company. There are so many non tech related aspects of the job that you have to master also that don't I would be very hesitant for anyone to say I have this programming knowledge or this technical skill set, I need to make a difference immediately. Give yourself that time to invest in all those other parts of the job before you set an expectation to succeed at the technical level.
Yeah, when we're on site, it's like the first day, just learn where the bathroom is. Like if you learn that the first day, that's a success. So the next question is about failures. Are there any failures that you'd want to share and talk about how they've helped you? And while you think about that, we can talk about what Chris said was, yeah, not really a failure exactly, but he's learned to not take criticisms on his code personally. Like your code is not you, you are not your code. The criticisms you get about your code are given to help you and to help the team. And then he talked about, being rejected. I think Andre talked about this, like it feels really bad, but it's less of a loss for you and more of a loss for the company who lost the chance to get you. And it's not personal. So none of this, the code and being rejected for a job, it's not a personal failing. It's just, for the code, the team is trying to help you improve, and then rejection, who knows why. So you can't take that too personally. Ryan, I liked his answer. He said, there's so many, we don't have that kind of time. Deleting stuff is a big failure. That's how you learn to have a backup. And then trying to learn two things at once doesn't always go well. And so make sure you have an outlet. And so that's how he talked about, a constructive outlet for those times when things don't go exactly how you wanted. So have any of y'all thought of an answer that you want to share for this one?
And not tied to a particular failure per se, but oftentimes in my career I find where I ended up with not the outcome I wanted to provide the team. It was due to not asking enough questions or making unknown assumptions in the process. So you're always better off to ask the why, the how, the reason than to unknowingly make an assumption to what that is. And so it kind of piggybacks back to what Fabio was saying, like you're going to ask questions, and asking questions is a great thing to do.
Yeah, and also, where I work at least, I introduce bugs in production all the time. At first, you were gonna break something because you were new and you didn't know, or you didn't know the exact thing to do, and it's not a failure per se, or I don't consider it to be. Like you break it, but that is kind of like a learning opportunity. Like I take your failures as learning opportunities and say, okay, now I'm gonna fix it. So let's one, no, like figure out how to fix it, and two is how to avoid it in the future, how to not break it again the same way or a similar way or something. And so, not technically a failure, but yeah, things are gonna break. It's code always gonna break.
Yeah, great answers.
So,
Andre?
yeah, not kind of along the same lines, but not necessarily a failure. But I think sometimes when you are on like the self-taught journey or the like self-development, it's easy to go into like a tutorial purgatory where you find these online videos and you build a project, exactly how it is, and you follow it step by step. That kind of gives you a false sense of confidence, if you will. And I say that because you followed someone's example step by step, but you didn't learn or fully digest the technology and how you can use it as a tool to assemble a project. So it's not quite a failure, but it can be a trap. And that was something that I learned along the way. So it's important to kind of branch off on your own path and kind of brainstorm projects that you want to put together and building those from scratch, kind of actively doing things will really help you solidify the concepts, the knowledge, and how to apply them. But not quite a failure, but it's just a different way of looking at how to approach teaching yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Those are some great answers. It looks like we might actually make it. I didn't think we'd make it through all these questions, but I think we might. The next one is, and again, feel free to post them in Twitch, and we'll be inviting everyone to join the call to ask more questions after the stream is over if y'all want to. The next question is, how has your perception of the industry changed?
Man, when you learn that COBOL will never die, that's going to change your life forever. And I'll tell you, working in a financial company, you know that COBOL will never die. So you're gonna see most of the time you're gonna see a lot of legacy code, a lot of code written in VB6 or COBOL 85 or weird using .NET Framework 2.0 or something. So I would say out there in the real world, not everything is new. Mongo is, for example, it's pretty new. A lot of people still use SQL Server, still use uh, Excel. A lot of companies do a lot of things in Excel. They don't have a database or a website, or they have a WinForms application, which is pretty old. So learning that out there in the world, not everything is brand new. Everything works fine. You learn in college, and that's how it goes. I mean, learning that all kinds of things still happen out there, it kind of changes your mindset.
Anybody else have an answer, Andre?
Yeah, for me, kind of how my perception of the industry has changed, has shifted, is when I first started transitioning into tech, a lot of the news reports are just articles that you'll see like on Twitter or just wherever. They mention the huge amount of software engineering roles available. They make it seem like there's just a surplus, and sometimes they're really low hanging fruit or easy to get hired. That can be a little bit of a facade. And I've learned that through my process of transitioning, and that nobody wants to be anybody's first job in the tech industry because it requires a lot of just detail and precision and understanding of the technologies. And so my perception of the industry has changed in that it's not quite as easy as you might think it is. You really have to do the legwork and then go from there. But my perception is just that it's the jobs aren't quite as easy as you would think. Yes, they are abundant and they are out there, but it will take the experience.
Yeah, Kelsey?
Yeah, I was gonna say my perception of like what a software engineer is has kind of changed. I used to kind of have that stereotypical image of like, the nerd in the basement, knows exactly what they're doing. They can hack into anything. And I found a lot more realistically, it's a lot of people Googling, asking questions, and really kind of learning as they go. So don't be afraid if you don't feel like you fit that kind of stereotypical software engineer. Just keep learning and keep growing every day.
Great answers. I think something that y'all said, Chris said, I thought it was like writing code all day. It's not really about the code. It's about solving business problems and working with your team to design solutions and going to lots of meetings. So if anybody else want to answer this one? If not, we'll go to things that you felt were important and then they turned out to not be all that important.
I would say language choice. Thinking that I have to choose one language and stick with it for the rest of my life. Like, when you choose a language, it's not a marriage or anything. You can say, oh, I don't like this. I don't like this pattern. I don't like this language. I like, I don't know, strongly typed versus non strongly typed or scripting languages. I mean, you think this is important? Oh, I want to start right, but it's not. Everything will change eventually. So
Yeah,
I would say, sorry, I think Kelsey mentioned this earlier, but you don't have to know everything. There's resources in that. Really, it's almost a skill that is the art of Googling. So just kind of repeating that, you literally don't have to know every single thing about every technology. because the nature of technology is that it changes really quick. So it's impossible to keep all the information. So I think your personality, you also would have to have a knack for constant learning.
A couple of things that are not important, your GPA, not important. Ryan had an interesting answer. He said doing things correctly. Like, yeah, that's important, but also doing it quickly is important too. So I thought that was an interesting answer to that one. What about some helpful things that other people have done for you? Anybody want to answer that one?
So I've been very, very fortunate. I call it my own personal board of directors, but uh, individuals that are willing to mentor me along the way, even if it's just kind of a simple check in. And then even on this call, I've had a couple people help me with case studies that I've got from potential employers. So just reaching out and keeping the communication open so that you can build that relationship and have people willing to help you with some of those complex challenges. But something that's been really super helpful for me is just having a team that's like a resource I can tap into.
I would say if you have a boss or a manager or something that trusts you to make your decisions and do the best, I think that helps a lot. And I've seen a lot of people struggling with that, of micromanaging and things like that. But yeah, having someone to your superior or whatever trust that you can do the job right, that helps a lot.
Yeah, we had some other answers along those same lines, like um, letting me know about job opportunities, helping me by an internal recommendation. That's how people get jobs a lot of the time, and the good jobs. John talked about the same thing as Andre. Answering questions, giving advice on how to format code, about website design, what their job is like, um, and so he said he really appreciates people investing in others, and so that's what we love to see in Slack and our Tech Oklahoma community. And then Ross had an interesting answer. He talked about, and he's been, well, I won't give it away. He talked about at the end the same thing that Chris said. He had a friend who helped him get a job, and then that was just a summer, I think, internship type thing. And then he's been there now for 30 years. So you can really change or like create someone's entire career just by like that one, like, hey, my friend's looking for a job. So I thought that was an interesting story. And then Ryan says, yeah, just taking a chance on me. Lots of people have helped in lots of different ways, and he's very grateful. So, anything else y'all want to talk about on? And we are starting to run a little bit low on time. So, if there's a question that we haven't gotten to that y'all are like, oh, I really want to answer that question, feel free to jump in with that one, or you can talk about habits that have been helpful or unhelpful. An answer from Chris is working for 8 hours straight. Not helpful. I'm such a big believer in taking breaks, and he is too. He talks about like that's not how it's meant to be. Like you need to, especially when you're stuck on something, walk away, go get a drink of water, get some fresh air. Taking a break is huge. You're not meant to work 8 hours without a break. Ryan had several, and again, I'll share if I don't forget. Help me remember to share the link to these slides so y'all can read all these details later. But several good suggestions that he has on things, and the big one is asking questions that y'all mentioned multiple times. Do y'all want to talk about what your day really looks like, or what are some other questions that we've had that y'all might want to answer? We are starting to get a little bit close to 3 o'clock. Um, our last question, I don't want to rush it too much, but we've got this: what does your day really look like compared to what you thought it would? And then just general advice will be the next question. So what do you have, Fabio?
Yeah, I was gonna say like you think you're gonna code all day and all that, but no. It's a bunch of people asking questions, why this is broken or something like that. And then a bunch of meetings that you explain what you're doing, why you're doing, or something like that. And sometimes, there's like helping people here, helping people there, answering a bunch of emails from a bunch of people. And then there's coding and the rest that usually goes like after all that. So it's not a lot. I mean, it's not coding 100% of the time. There's a lot of meetings and answering questions.
Yes, and like you said, you might have time for coding at the end of the day. Chris said basically the same thing. You might have a day when you can just put your head down and focus on work, but it's just meetings, discussions, which are good things to do, but also just lots of meetings that don't feel as important, but you still have to do it. Ryan said, yeah, he pretty much knew what to expect. It just depends. So that's a question I've asked in interviews before is, what's a typical day like? And pretty much every company has said there is no typical day. It varies so much from day to day, but it's not going to be the 80 hours of coding that you might think. It's going to be lots of different things. And then we have, I think this is our last question to answer, is just what advice you have. Asking lots of questions. That's what y'all have said multiple times. Being dedicated to your craft, picking things to specialize in, and just communicating. That's the thing that I feel like a theme that we've seen over and over in this. So feel free to answer any of these questions that we sort of started to gloss over towards the end, or any additional advice that you want to give to answer just this. What advice do you have that you want to share with everyone?
I just have a one-word answer for that. And for me, it's persistence.
Great answer. Anybody else?
I would say find what works for you. So as we've kind of talked about, everyone's going to learn slightly differently. And for me personally, I consider myself very introverted. But I found that having some sort of like accountability buddy, or just somebody that was working on a similar project, even if it wasn't exactly the same project I was working on, having somebody to check in with and say, are you stuck? Are you frustrated? Did you achieve the thing that you were hoping to achieve? Kind of helps keep me motivated, as well as it helps me to practice talking about my code, working in a team. It helps me to kind of realize it when I'm having those moments of like, oh, this is really frustrating. I feel like I should be farther than I am, to be able to check in with somebody and say, oh, they're in the same spot. Okay, it's not just me. This is, a problem, and we're going to solve it. And we're going to figure it out.
I want to plug in Slack. We have the 100 Days of Code, a channel that was kind of meant to be that persistence and that place where you can ask questions and talk things out. And we've got several different channels that would be a great place to find that place for conversation. So yeah, like Chris says, we are getting a little bit short. I'll give you each just a few more seconds to say anything else you want to say, and then we'll end the stream and be watching for the link. You can jump on and join this call and stay on as long as you want to chat. Caleb, what do you have?
I just want to end on this one. Build relationships, collaborate. I mean, as Fabio and Chris both stated earlier, a lot of your day is not coding. So really invest in the interpersonal development, and then that will take you a lot farther than a technical skill right out the gate.
Great answer. Anybody else have anything else to say? If not, we'll be ending the stream. And OKC Sharp meets at lunch tomorrow. Our group will meet again in 2 weeks on Pi Day, March 14th, for Raspberry Pi and other Pi pun talks. You can find all these details in Slack. That's the one place to go for all these different things. I'll give you just a few more seconds to think about either people in the Twitch chat who want to post, or our panelists if you have any last words you want to say.
I would just say, kind of to echo what I've been talking about, if anyone is looking for somebody that they want to talk with code, feel free to reach out on Slack. I'd be happy to talk through what you're working on, and happy to talk about what I'm working on.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate all four of you coming on, and also Chance, who had to leave, but doing those announcements for us really helps. And so we appreciate all four of you coming on and answering these questions, and feel free to stick around. But I think that'll be the end of our stream. So thanks, everybody.